What's going on, guys? It's the Unhinged Engineer here. I wanted to do something a little fun, a little different from what we usually do on this channel in the spirit of the spooky season we're in. Halloween is in a few days, and I thought nothing is quite as spooky in today's engineering and STEM career field job market as recruitment, like interviews, on-sites, workday applications. You guys know the drill. It all sucks. Even at the best companies with the best recruiting processes, it's not really that fun. In those situations, it's just kind of bearable. And so I thought it would be fun to share with you guys 3 of the recruiting horror stories I've had over the last few years of my career. So I have 3 different stories I want to share with you guys. I'm going to share them in increasing order of severity and actually chronologically, which is kind of a coincidence. But yeah, the first story I'll share with you guys is like not really that bad. It's just kind of a waste of everybody's time and demonstrates some ignorance on the part of the recruiter, but whatever. The first story is not that bad. And then the third story was, in my biased opinion, freaking terrible. So I'll get through all of them in today's video. If you're related to any of these stories over the course of your career or find yourself in these kinds of situations in the future, you'll know you're not alone. You'll know we're all going through this together, and at the end of the day, sometimes shit just happens. So also, if you have any recruiting horror stories of your own that you think are worth sharing, definitely share them in the comments below. Before I get into that, like I said, I'm the Unhinged Engineer. I make professional development content for young engineering and STEM professionals like myself. So if you're interested in kind of finding the right direction for your career, figuring out how to get the job that you want or the compensation you want or pivot into a new field, if any of that stuff is topics that you're interested in, then this is definitely the channel for you. So like, comment, subscribe in that case. But without further ado, I'm gonna throw some gameplay up because it's just a goofy video. And yeah, enjoy. So story number 1 I want to share with you guys is actually from my senior year of college. Prior to that, in my junior year, I'd actually competed in my university's hackathon and won, believe it or not. And I was really proud of that project. It was super cool. That was during 2022, and so there were lots of world events going on at the time that were very not only televised, but more importantly in this case, put on the internet. And so I built this humanitarian web page with some of my friends where we would geotag different images, CCTV screens, stuff like that from conflicts going on in the world, and then we could put them up on a map of where those conflicts were taking place and try to provide information to refugees trying to exit the country or whatever parts of the country were currently extremely dangerous. And so it was like humanitarian section of the hackathon program. It was really cool. Obviously we didn't see it through all the way to the fruition that you would in reality, but in 48 hours, we did pretty good. We built something pretty awesome. And so the point I'm trying to get at here is that there was nothing to do with this hackathon in regard to hacking. I don't do anything with cybersecurity, especially not with red hat hacking and breaking into stuff and being in places I shouldn't belong. I don't know how that works at all. And so, yeah, I just kind of threw it up on my resume as like a hackathon project that we won. A lot to do with AI, computer vision, stuff like that. Threw it up on my resume and really just forgot about it because at the end of the day, what's more important is your internships and stuff like that. Now, fast forward to my senior year and I get an interview at a pretty legit company that I'd heard of before and seemed interesting. And I think the title was just software engineer. It wasn't really anything specific. But at the time I was still in school. I didn't really understand being specific about exact titles quite yet. I was still kind of figuring that all out. I was like, okay, like I'll take an interview. It's an opportunity to practice, right? I get on the phone with this guy and he's super nice. And he immediately like dives into the hackathon. But when I say the hackathon, he doesn't actually dive into what I did. He basically just said, oh, I see you have a hackathon on your resume. And so I thought we could structure the interview this way. And proceeds to rant for like 10 minutes about this hypothetical situation where some adversary of ours has a database and the database is set up with this kind of tech stack that I, front end, back end, I didn't understand any of the stuff at the time either, barely understand it now. Just like really in-depth hypothetical scenario about this adversary that has a database with information that we want. And where would I start looking for vulnerabilities in this kind of tech stack? I'm sitting there like scratching my head like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And so usually in most situations I would break down the problem and ask him a question and like try to kind of brute force my way through it. But to tell you the truth, I don't know anything about hacking because I don't want to be a hacker. It's not really something I'm interested in. So I just kind of ask him, I'm like, wait a second, time out. What kind of position are we talking about here? Which, for the record, this is the first round of interviews, and so he hadn't even explained to me the position I was interviewing for, which is another red flag. Usually an interview would open up and they would say like, this is a position we're interviewing for. I'm sure you saw the job rec. What do you think of it? Blah, blah, blah. This guy just dove into the deep end of the pool like, head first, right? And so I asked him, I was like, what kind of position are we talking about? And that was where I found out I was going to be like a penetration tester. I'm just like, oh, okay, time out. I'm not really a penetration tester. I've never hacked into something in my life. I probably couldn't break into a microwave if I had to. I think this might not be a great fit, which again, you know, as somebody who's really interested in professional development stuff, clearly based on the content of this channel, I felt kind of bad like just quitting mid-interview, but this was clearly a miscommunication. And the guy basically said, oh, whoops. Like that was how the interview ended. He didn't realize that somebody along the way had handed him a resume that he definitely shouldn't have gotten because this guy was some kind of hacker and I was not. So that interview lasted probably a minute after he finished his rant about this very strange hypothetical problem. So to me, a little bit insulting that like the guy didn't even read my resume. I don't know. Recruitment processes, like I said in the beginning, are flawed and weird, and it is what it is, right? So nothing personal. But yeah, kind of baby horror story to start off with. But like I said in the beginning, I'm kind of share them with you in increasing order of severity. So let's get to the second one, which is a little bit higher stakes. So second recruitment horror story that I have to share, this was a few years later, like kind of more recently. I was looking for a new job, and I got a callback for a GNC position. So guidance, navigation, and control. It's something I'd done in previous internships. It's definitely something I'm interested in. It wasn't my title at the time. It isn't my title now, but I would say it's a field that I kind of work adjacent to. And so I was like, yeah, sure, let's do this. Key piece of context here. I had been working with a recruiting agency. So this is not a recruiter from the company I'm interviewing with, kind of like in the last scenario. This is a person from a third party that is being contracted by the company that I was actually interviewing to work at. So if red flags and alarm bells are going off in your head, good, they should be. And you have some kind of intuition that I did not have at the time. But effectively, I was looking for a new job, and I was like, okay, this guy says that he has a few different companies that he's been talking to. It sounds like a good inroad. Let me take it, right? And I definitely learned a lot from this experience that I could share with you guys in a whole different video about what it's like working with a recruiting agency versus an internal recruiter at a company. And so this guy from the recruiting agency gave me like a ton of very technically heavy GNC engineering questions, and an interesting question. Lots of different questions about GNC engineering, which is obviously what the position is for. So I was like, oh, sweet, jackpot. And I spent like a whole weekend, hours and hours and hours preparing, because I kind of was going whole hog on just about every interview I got, which is another questionable strategy, but that's here nor there. So I was going whole hog on this, even though I wasn't the most interested in the company. I wanted to keep my options open. And so I went crazy. I spent like hours and hours and hours preparing for this interview. I get on the phone Monday afternoon with this kid, and I say that because I'm still kind of a kid, right? I'm pretty young. But this kid, like, at most my age, maybe younger, which no ageism here. Like, I'm pretty young, and I think I'm doing good work and capable of interviewing someone. But I don't think I'd come into it quite as freaking arrogant as this guy did. This guy's, like, shit did not stink. It was just, oh, God, like, off-putting aura. We talk about the position a little bit, and it becomes clear to me that it's kind of half a GNC position, other half a software engineering position. And given that this is a startup, that's not really surprising. There's a lot of work to do, and somebody's gonna do it. And so I wasn't opposed to that. Like, I'm also, I mean, at the time my title was software engineer, and functionally speaking, I still am a software engineer, right? I'm writing a lot of code all day. So I wasn't opposed to that. But, you know, the kid kind of like talks my ear off about this position, how great it is, and how great this company is. And then he goes, okay, let's get into the technical part of the interview. And the first question he asked me is he like sits back in his chair, like he's like Warren Buffett. And he goes, when I say computer memory, what comes to mind? That was what he said, like in that kind of tone. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, right? Like, you've got to be kidding me. And so I tell him, well, like, you know, computer memory is where you store information. Usually there's some kind of value to it, and then an address like that you could point to and you could reference in different places, right? Like, I explained to him how computer memory works. Like, there's RAM, different kinds of RAM, there's flash memory, cache memory, whatever. Explain to him what memory is, and we start going at it, talking about like pointers and pass by reference, pass by value, like, you know, flight software, best practices, and different stuff like that. Like, really, really deep software engineering stuff never once getting to any of the stuff that I had prepared for over the weekend. Like I think we had like one question towards the end about projectile motion, like if I threw a ball and I didn't account for air resistance, like how would I model that? Which is kind of a high school question wrapped up like an engineering question, but not really a good one. So this guy, put bluntly, had like no idea what he was doing. And I think in hindsight, when I've been sitting in recruiting trainings for the company I currently work at, and they say obvious stuff like use the pre-canned batch of questions that we've provided you and make sure that you're there with a superior to yours or shadow one of them beforehand. And most importantly, like, don't be an asshole because you're representing the company. Like when I hear all these things in recruiting meetings or recruiting trainings, excuse me, they're kind of obvious. It's like, duh, this is a waste of my time. But apparently not, because some people just don't get that. And so I respect the numerous HR trainings that we're required to take. Oftentimes they are more useful than people give them credit for. And I think the interview trainings are one of them, because this guy, more likely than not, like somebody else flaked on it and just threw this kid at the problem. And he was clearly not equipped to handle it. So that was like a nightmare and it put a bad taste in my mouth about this whole company. But I actually passed this round of interviews, and I kind of wish I didn't, because the next round is my third story. Buckle up, fasten your seatbelts. It's an Onsite, which is pretty standard. Lots of companies require an Onsite as the last round. It's a great way to get a lot of rounds in the last round, right? Because you go there in the morning, you spend all day talking to people, get to know the team, see the facilities. If you're lucky, you get to meet like the founder or whatever of the company, stuff like that. Like Onsites are pretty standard. What was not standard was that I was expected to pay for everything myself upfront and then get reimbursed later, which again, when traveling for work, like I travel for work all the time, sometimes you do have to front certain things and get reimbursed later. And I've never had a problem with that at all, right? Like I've never been stiffed by my employer in any way, any of my employers anyway. But these people weren't my employers yet. They were people interviewing me. And this was a very, very small company. I was trying to keep my options open. I was like pseudo interested. And so I did it. I put up the money. I paid like $600 for a flight out and a hotel and all this stuff. And for the record, I will never do that again. I will never do that again. I don't care how interested I am in the company. They should be able to handle it, right? Anyway, so I book all this stuff. Around the time I was interviewing with this company, I actually was interviewing with another company. And I wound up really loving the other company, going all the way through the rounds with them, and ultimately getting an offer. So I'm like done. And I had no more interest in this other one. But I had an outstanding $600 bill that I didn't really want to eat with my own money, right? And so I was like, well, if I flake on this interview, the odds that I'm actually going to get refunded are incredibly low. In addition to that, the recruiter has no allegiance to me. Like I'm just a head that they're headhunting for this job. And the second I come off the market, they have zero reason to do the right thing. And for the story I shared last time about like giving me crappy interview questions and not really preparing me well, this recruiter I was working with was kind of all over the place. And none of those places indicated that they were operating with integrity. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just go. I guess I'll just go and just do the interview, and whatever happens, happens. So I slap together this presentation. I show up the day of, and I perform. I do my thing. I do my presentation. I go and I talk to other people, and I try to perform my best in the interviews. And by the way, in every round of interviews at this company, it's like bad vibes, bad vibes, bad vibes, bad vibes, like all day. So thank goodness I had found the other company that I wound up really loving. So bad vibes all around. And so I definitely wouldn't have taken the job even if I gotten it. Despite what I said earlier about trying to keep my options open, you don't want to overcommit to somewhere that you can immediately tell it's not going to treat you right. And so I'm just getting bad vibes all day, but I'm like thugging it out. I'm acting respectfully of people, even when people are not acting respectfully towards me, which happened on several occasions. I think a lot of these guys were like, you know, startup bros who had previously worked at like really famous companies, which I'd worked at too, by the way. So, you know, they had an air about them. Whatever, it is what it is. That's another video I could make when I have a little more courage. But yeah, like I was not getting treated the way that I enjoyed throughout that entire interview process for 8 hours. It was 8 hours of interviewing. And so I get to the founder interview at the very end. And I'm talking to this guy, and like, he was very nice, actually. Like he was good, and told me about the vision of the company. I feel like I answered his questions pretty well, even if, for the record, there were some rounds I definitely didn't perform that well in prior to that. And so it gets to the very end, and I'm like, hey, thanks so much for the time today. I really appreciate it. Like, blah, 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 all the smoke blowing. And I said, like, I was really hoping I could get reimbursed today, which is the entire reason, I didn't say this part, but which is the entire reason I'd flown across the country to go see this person. And he's like, yeah, sure, like, no problem, don't worry about it. Do you have Venmo? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And he's like, can I have your Venmo? And I'm like, sure. So I like give him my Venmo, and I'm half expecting him to just Venmo me, but then other half confused as hell that I'm getting Venmo'd by the CEO of a tech company right now. and he doesn't Venmo me. He's just like, okay, we'll give this to our COO and he'll get it to you. And at this point, he starts like shuttling me out the door, you know, like you're getting the bouncer, talk to me outside, like walk out. And he just like closes the door. And I'm like standing there in the middle of the city I don't live in. Like, what the hell just happened to me? I go home. I basically pass out. I'm like, I'm done. I'm going to sleep. And I wake up the next morning, and I still have not gotten any of my money back. And now I'm getting on the return flight home. And at this point, I'm pretty confident I'm not getting this job. And I'm even more confident I don't want it. But my performance in it was kind of like, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, which, given the aura of the company, I don't think it was good enough. Not saying that 6 out of 10 should be good enough to get a job. You really want to kill it and get a 10 out of 10. And I definitely can say I performed well in the other interviews for the company I actually wound up getting an offer with than for this one. So, nonetheless, I get a phone call from the recruiter, and he's all like freaking peachy. Hey man, how'd everything go? Like, what'd you think of the company? Like, blah, blah, blah. He gives me like this spiel, and then I got to give him a spiel back saying I like this company more than I actually do. It's just like, a mess. And by the end of it, like this is the part that like pissed me off. He's like, so I wanted to circle back to salary. What are you thinking? And in my head, I'm like, first of all, I'm not even gonna get this job, so why are we talking about salary? And then second of all, I'm like, dude, just pay me back my money that you owe me. So I basically say that. I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like, I gotta think about it. Can I have my money back, please? I really would like my money back. I kind of pushed the envelope a little further than is probably professional, but I was just getting pissed, right? And the guy's like, okay, you're right. Like, I'll go talk to them. Like, I'm sorry. We hang up. And then, like, as I'm boarding my plane later that afternoon, I get an email that says, hey, you were not selected for this position, and $600 in my bank account. And I'm like, okay. Like, phew. This storyline has concluded. And by the way, I never got any follow-up from the recruiter about why. I never got any feedback. I never got shit. Except my $600, which is what I really wanted. So thankfully it was all okay, because I just wound up going somewhere else. That was like a nightmare. It was an adventure around the country that I really had no interest in going on, but I did nonetheless. So yeah, those were 3 kind of recruiting horror stories I've had over the course of my career. I have a few others, but I think honestly those are the worst experiences I've had. Definitely that last one. That was a nightmare. But I also made some bad decisions myself, like footing the bill for an interview process when I really shouldn't have done that. I should have just waited longer. And then, having gotten the offer from the other company, I just could have bailed, but I jumped the gun. Lessons learned, right? Lessons learned all around throughout all these. Yeah, those stories kind of sucked. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I just thought it would be fun to share with you guys. Some of the horror stories I've had over the years, that you can know in your heart of hearts that you are not alone. Recruiting sucks overall. And if you're a recruiter, or if you're involved in the recruitment process at any company that you work for, try to make it suck a little bit less for the person on the other side, because you never know when that might be you. I know that. Definitely my experience. Everybody should treat each other with respect as much as possible. And then you can avoid having horror stories shared on the internet for hopefully tens or maybe even hundreds, if I'm lucky, of people to share and commiserate over. So yeah, like I said in the beginning of this video, I'm the Unhinged Engineer. I promise most of my content is way more professional than this. I've been trying to share tips with other young engineering people like myself on how to get the most out of their career, how to achieve the goals that they're running after. And so yeah, if any of that content interests you, definitely like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Happy Halloween, guys.